Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Bruchim Aba'im, welcome. Nice to be together and to hear how wonderful the singing is this morning. Perhaps it's that everybody's more comfortable knowing that we are the group that's always together. In any case, it's good to see you all. I'm going to continue to teach a little bit about this morning's text that we read. You know, in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, which is one of the most beautiful museums in the world, there is a wing that's devoted to archaeology, as you might expect, and the archaeology exhibit is exceptional. In that section of the museum, there sits one very, very large block of stone. It's a stone that comes from the Temple Mount. It was believed to be at the corner of the western side of the Chatzer, the temple's courtyard. And everyone who walked into the temple was able to see the words which were engraved upon this particular stone. And you can see it to this day, thousands of years later. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. This engraved stone is well over 2,000 years old. And as you know, these are the words of the priestly benediction, which are found in this week's Parsha. It is believed to be the oldest known continuous prayer to humankind. It was the blessing which the ancient priest recited over the people. And as it is recorded here, it is the portion that we continue to read and continue to recite. It is part of the Amidah and recited at almost every special event on the Jewish calendar and in all of the transitional moments of our lives. It is also recited by Christians at their holy moments. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his light to shine upon you, and may God be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face to you and bless you with peace. On Friday night, traditional Jews will bless their children with these very words. I think I've shared with you in the past that as my kids moved away, I made a practice of doing this on the telephone every Friday afternoon. Sometimes it gets late in the afternoon, it's right before Shabbat, and I hadn't been able to call them. And I can be assured that they'll call me, even as adults, and they will ask me for the blessing. And it is my great pleasure. I feel that the recitation of this blessing allows the clergy or the parent, whoever is reciting it, to serve as a conduit, bringing extraordinary words from the Holy Torah, bringing words from our tradition, from the place where they originated to the place where they are received. In other words, as I recite those words, I always see myself, not as being the originator of the blessing by any means, but just being a conduit through whom the blessing flows. One of the beauties of our tradition is that there are very few absolute ideas. You certainly know that if you come to the synagogue. We'll read a position about something and we're most likely to find a counter position. We'll look at a text and very often we'll see there's a counter text. And the fact of a counter idea is not a reason to reject the original, but rather it's a reason to search for deeper meaning. It's often in that tension that we find between ideas found in our text that actually true growth can be found. And so let me explain. God tells Moses to speak to Aaron and his sons, to tell them, this is how you are to bless the people. This immortal blessing has been studied from the perspective of its meaning and value, as well as the structure of this blessing. And each of those things has something to teach. This morning I want to consider another category. And that category has to do with the fact that it's written in the singular, but followed by a promise of a blessing in the plural. So if you notice, God gives the blessing to the people, Yivarechecha, may you, the singular, be blessed. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and may God guard you. May God watch over you. And that's true with each of the three lines. Each of them are in the singular. But then in the text, after we read this priestly benediction, we read the following. V'samu et shmi al b'nei Yisrael v'ani avarchem. In this way, they should link my name to B'nai Yisrael, and I will bless them. Notice what happens. The blessing that the priest gives is in the singular, but then God says, and I will bless them. It's in the plural. So why the switch? It's undoubtedly purposeful, and I think it's very important. And once again, I realize that that switch can be understood in different ways also. But what I'd like to present is a fundamental aspect, a fundamental tension of living a Jewish religious life and our religious expressions. And the fact that I chose to talk about this morning really goes back to the talk, the introduction to the book of Ruth that Shelley Gross gave. And when she spoke about the meaning or the connection between Ruth and Naomi, Ruth and her people, and her experience of being in a religious community. I said at that time afterwards, most of you don't come here to be with God. I know that. It's okay to admit it. In spite of what you see, most of you come here to be with each other. We are the only religious tradition that I know of that's based on an experience of God that's not personal, but it's communal. This is not about your personal faith, because each and every one of you may believe some of the same things as the other, but each and every one of you have your own personal relationship with God. Each and every one of you have a desire to connect to something beyond yourselves, something that is transcendent. We do have personal spiritual lives. We want to feel blessed, and we want to be blessed. But this is the tension that comes from the text, from Bamidbar, because it points that out both in the singular, may God bless you, may God guard over you. But then God says, when you link your name to your people, when you cast your destiny with your people, you are creating a special and a unique people, because he says, I will bless all of you, Yivarchem. By the way, this tension is felt in many different ways. How often have I heard people say, why do I need to come to shul on Shabbat morning? I can pray alone. You know, my response is, of course you can. You can pray alone. And you can have a very personal experience, and that's wonderful. We all need that. There's a very special feeling when we are moved to pray on our own. There was a former chair of the education department at Hebrew University. He was also a former director of Camp Ramah in New England. His name was Ray Artz, Dr. Rabbi Ray Artz. He once wrote that when he goes into the synagogue to daven, he always has to find an aisle seat for himself. And that way he can feel the space that allows for a personal connection to God. That is, that open space. But on the other side, he says, he can feel the place where he connects to the people around him, to the community. And that's why if you're here earlier enough on Shabbat morning, you will see that the sanctuary fills up first with the aisle seats. I don't think it's merely a bathroom issue. I want to teach you a bracha. I want to teach you a blessing. I know that many of you know many brachot, but I would guess that most of you have never heard of this one. The bracha is to be recited when you see a crowd of Jews. Obviously, that became questionable. What is a crowd of Jews? And it was said that for a Jew to say this bracha, when he or she sees a crowd of Jews, there has to be 600,000 Jews. So that's why you've never heard of the bracha, because you've never been in that context. And I'm sure that even those of you, if any of you were at Woodstock, understood that most of those people weren't Jewish. But there's a lot of Jewish people. Why does it say 600,000? Because the tradition teaches that 600,000 of our brothers and sisters stood at Sinai, and there they received the revelation of God. There they received Torah. Now keep in mind the following, and that is this, that although 600,000 people stood together at Sinai, according to a very famous midrash, not everybody heard the voice in the same way. Each person heard God's voice according to their own proclivities. A teacher heard God as an educator. A builder heard God as someone who wished to build. A doctor heard God as a healer. Everyone brought their own experiences and heard God in their own unique way. So the bracha that is recited when you see a mass gathering of Jews goes like this. Baruch atah Adonai hechacham harazim. It praises God who is the wise one, who discerns the hidden secrets. That's the bracha that's said when you see a large gathering of Jews. Baruch atah Adonai hechacham harazim. It's as if the blessing comes to tell us that a mass of people is not to be seen as a mass of people, but rather it's made up of individuals. And every individual has his or her own spirit, own mind, own thoughts, and yes, every individual carries their own secrets. And God sees each of us as he sees all of us. So even in a crowd where we're sharing a large experience, there's attention paid to the individual. And then this speaks to the idea that I mentioned in the very beginning. Our tradition and the texts that we have inherited exists in balance. There is this and there is that. And there are very few absolutes. Our ideas are nuanced and need to be considered from different angles and different perspectives. We are a communal religion. We daven in a minyan. When the experience of God was first found, it was found to be in a mass gathering. Every other religion, the revelation from the Holy One goes from the Holy One to an individual, not ours. We're responsible for one another, and yet each of us brings our own yearnings. Each of us has our own spirit. Each of us has our own particular relationship with the transcendent. Sometimes it's easy to find, and sometimes it feels like it's missing. And this then goes back to the priestly benediction. We pray that God will bless each and every one of us, that God will bless you, and 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 God will bless me. And when we realize God's blessing as individuals, then we know that our community is blessed. And as the Torah said, V'samu et shmi et al b'nei Yisrael, va'ani avarachem. And they shall link my name with the people Israel, and I will bless them. And we feel this interdependence on each other. We need each other. If I pray for your well-being and you pray for mine, we'll strengthen each other because we care about each other. It sounds so simple, but it's a deep spiritual truth. We want to be whole, and to truly be whole, we need to be in the lives of others. I hope that I gave you a little bit more of an insight into what seems to be this simple priestly benediction, Birkat Kohanim. And I know there's so much more to uncover in those magical, mystical words. The blessings and the words immediately following, though, provide a very important dynamic. To be a Jew means that we recognize that each one of us is an individual, an autonomous being with our own experience. Each one of us is independent with our own spirits and yearnings. But our lives are intertwined, and we share the responsibility of community. We can each be blessed, and we're tied together in a covenant with God as we are all blessed. Then as a community and as a people, we can realize how lucky, how fortunate, how blessed we are. Shabbat Shalom.